Welcome back, football fans. So this has been a great season. Obviously, transitioning now from English Premier League, Man City once again becoming champions, and of course, Champions League, where once again Real Madrid became champions once again. And now we flow into obviously summer transfers and the Euros. Perfect. If you're a football fan like myself, this could not be any better. This is just at the precipice of my summer holiday, so I'm going to be able to wake up and watch these games. Obviously, that's great news. Living in Taiwan, obviously, timing, these games are not at the perfect time. They start at 12 o'clock at night and 3 o'clock in the morning. So it's not easy to do when you're working, but summer vacation is here. So I'm going to be able to obviously enjoy these semifinals perfectly. Hopefully you do too. But stay tuned. I'm going to look at these matchups in the semifinals, give my impression, my opinions on what's going on, and we'll get back to you after this. Welcome back, everybody. So Euro 2024. Who were you favoring going into the Euros? Obviously, I made a previous video sort of talking about some of the favorites and teams that I was expecting that were going to do well. And it's always interesting to go back and look at how things have played out. So let's just spend a few minutes now just to sort of recap what we've seen. Going into these Euros, obviously France, Germany, and England were the three favorites to do very well. Obviously, Germany is hosting. England has a lot of hype behind them, and France just is a perennial contender. So it's understandable that those three teams were getting a lot of attention. Teams like Spain and Portugal, not so much. Over the last few years, they've been a little inconsistent. They haven't had the upfront scoring that they've necessarily needed to be at their best. And then, of course, you have Italy, who won the last Euros. So they're obviously a potential contender as well. And then, of course, Denmark and the Netherlands and other teams that potentially could do well. But at this moment, they weren't really seen as that strong of sides. And we've seen how that's unfolded. Italy out, which was a super surprise. Obviously, a very good coach, the coach of Napoli, Spinoza. People were very sort of disappointed with the performance of the Italian side. They're kind of in a transition, moving past a lot of their veteran players and trying to embed a lot of younger players. And obviously, when you do that, often you can go through a difficult time. And that's probably the best way to describe what Italy's going through. England have been underperforming. I just watched, of course, their last performance against Slovenia. I always mix up which is which. But it was a terrible game to watch. Very frustrating. England looks very, very limited. They weren't very aggressive. I did think the young midfielder, Mainu, was probably one of the best players on the field at that time. But a lot of the veteran players that get a lot of attention really underperformed. And then, of course, the manager making changes in the squad too late during the game. It ended up being effective and ended up working out, scoring one goal in the 90th minute and one goal in extra time to end up winning 2-1. But it was not the kind of performance that you're going to look forward to and think, whoa, this team's going to dominate. This is my favorite. France, similarly, have really been underperforming. But when you listen to a lot of the pundits, a lot of them are saying that this is expected. This is the way the manager wants his team to play. Kind of like Southgate as well. Very defensive, not letting goals in, and then just sort of waiting for the counter, waiting for breakdowns and opportunities to capitalize and getting that one goal. Kind of like the great Italian teams in the past used to do, which obviously didn't entertain anybody. So it's a matter of what you like as a footballer. I'm an English fan, but I'd rather watch the team perform at their best than to see them, limp into the finals of the Euros where potentially they could win, just like they did the last Euros and just like they did the World Cup, where they were contenders, but they didn't show enough, right? And that's the problem. These teams all seem to be playing very safe. Then we get to teams like Germany and Spain. Germany and Spain have been the opposite, right? Playing very well with the attacking wingers that Germany has, Musiala and Wirtz, two young, exceptional players. I pray that Musiala will come to Liverpool, please, 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 please. And then of course for Spain, the same, right? The young kid, what's his name? Little dreadlock Rasta boy, Watson. Why can't I think of his name? It's definitely not a Spanish name, but very exciting player. And then of course Gamal, the Barcelona player. Them two young players, not afraid of anything, right? Just bombing forward, creating problems for the defense, right? And that's the difference between these two examples. You have two teams that have tons of talent, probably more talent than Germany and Spain. Yet the way they're playing is definitely contrasting. You have two teams that want to sit back and be very defensive focused. And then you have two teams that are bombing forward, being very aggressive, putting the onus on you to stop them. And that's their best defense. They're going to be attacking you, keeping the ball in your end, and then forcing you to stop them from scoring. Whereas England and France are doing the opposite. They're trying to control possession, but neither are doing a great job at it. And they're not really creating much offensive attack, so they're not really pressuring the defense and creating many turnovers or mistakes from the opposition, right? So those are two really big, obvious things that I've noticed leading into these semifinals. And then obviously we are where we are today. Let's take a peek. Let's break it down round by round. So here's the overall finals. Spain versus Germany, Portugal versus France. Sorry, my face is in the way. The Netherlands versus Turkey, and England versus Switzerland. I know I did not fill this out, but I will give you my predictions now, and then we can go look a little deeper into it in a minute. I do favor Germany to beat Spain. As I said, both of these teams are being very offensively aggressive, playing very well. Both teams have a lot of talent, right? A lot of up and coming, budding youth. They both have managers that are playing a very exciting style of football. So this is a game I'm very excited to watch. I think it's going to be probably one of the best games of these semifinals. And it's kind of a shame either one of these two teams are out of it after this game. But, that's sports. Somebody's got to win. Somebody's got to lose. In this case, I have to favor Germany because obviously they're going to have the home court advantage. And I think, that does play into effect, especially when you look at the history of Germany and how well they've played at home. So I definitely think Germany is going to beat Spain, but I think it's probably going to be a fantastic game with a lot of goals from both teams. And I could easily see this potentially ending 4-3 for Germany. Then, of course, you have Portugal versus France. On the outside, this is a no-brainer. You have to say France obviously has tons of talent, consistently has been the better team, and probably is the definitive favorite in this matchup. Ronaldo, well, I appreciate and respect what he's done, and obviously he showed a ton of heart in the last game, crying after his missed penalty, but then coming back and scoring the first penalty in extra time to lead his team forward. You got to appreciate the fact that this guy is a competitor. And I do appreciate that, even though I am a Messi fan. But I think Portugal would be better without him. I think if you put him on the bench, brought him in later in games, and allowed the youth to lead this Portuguese team, they would be far better. They have a ton of talent. And there's no reason why they should still be trying to ride an old horse to the finish line. Because the reality is he's not the defensive player that they need. He also doesn't have the speed, right? He's just not the same caliber of player that historically he was. That's why obviously he plays out of position now and into a far more forward position. So I do think France is going to win. I think this is going to be a bit of an underwhelming game. I think France is going to control most of the possession. And Portugal, I do expect them to score one. But I don't think they have the game plan or just the squad at this moment to beat France. Obviously, France has been underwhelming, but they do step up in these type of moments. So I do expect France to end up winning, and then we could see Germany versus France in the semifinals. Uh, I guess I should have to change my name. Okay, let me change that to quarterfinals. Sorry, that's me not even thinking clearly. But obviously, in the semifinals. On the other bracket, Netherlands versus Turkey, it's a tough match. On the outside, you would assume the Netherlands should win. They're obviously a country with a ton of history, especially in the Euros and the World Cup. Obviously, legendary players throughout the history of the Netherlands, but they're also a team that's in transition as well. They don't really have the forwards that they historically have had. Defensively, they're strong. In the midfield, they're good. But who's the guy that's going to be leading them? Right now, you have a back who is probably the most dominant and most dangerous scorer on the team. Well, that does seem to be the norm if you look at both Spain and Germany, who are also utilizing that type of offense. It's really funny how things change, right? Now, a lot of the attacking is on the wings. A lot of these teams no longer have a striker in the middle of the park, or historically when they had two strikers up front playing off of one another, things have really went away from that, just to sort of open up the field and allow a lot more opportunity to attack from the wings. So this is a tough game. On the outside looking in, you have to favor Netherlands, but I think when you do something like this, you always have to keep your mind open for an upset. And well, I did basically pick the two favorites in the first two games, both Germany and France. I'm going to lean towards Turkey here and go out on a limb and say this Turkish team is going to be very motivated to prove that they are justified in being in this position. And I think they're going to give Netherlands a lot of problems because the Netherlands is struggling to score. That's going to be their Achilles that basically leads Turkey to the win. So I look for Turkey to win 1-0 against the Netherlands and move forward in this quarterfinals. And then it gets to England and Switzerland. Switzerland obviously is not as talented as England. They don't have the depth. They don't have the squad depth. They don't have the talent overall. But what they do have is a system that everybody buys into. Everybody feels comfortable playing it. When you watch them, you can see that they're working for each other. There's no ego, and there's no lack of idea. You can see they really all are on the same page, which is really what the problem with England has been. They don't look like they're on the same page, whether that's coming from the manager or whether that's just individualistic. It's too much for me to specifically say. But all we know is they're not performing to the level that people expect them to do, whereas Switzerland has overperformed. They've done very well. But in saying that, well, I think Switzerland in the first half is going to be very dangerous. I do think England is going to win this. They do find ways to get through these kind of games. And England has been very fortunate to have a very easy draw. If you need to get through Netherlands, Turkey, or Switzerland to get to the finals, I mean, you couldn't ask for anything better. Whereas you look, of course, at the Germany, Spain, Portugal, and France side, killers on every side. So that's going to be a much more difficult side, which could also play into England's benefit moving forward. Injuries, yellow cards leading to red cards, things that potentially could limit these squads. Best foot forward type of approach. Whereas England, they have everything laid out for them for the perfect scenario to get to the finals. If there ever was a year for England to win the Euros, this is the year. But that doesn't mean they're going to do it. You still have to perform. You still have to grab the bull by the horns and win it. So that's something so far that they've done, but not in a very convincing, consistent manner. So let's move forward in this and break it down. So England, Switzerland, as I said, I'm obviously an English fan. I support England, but I'm not historically a fanatical English fan. I've supported Germany throughout the years. I've supported France. I've supported Spain. I generally, since I'm not English, I'm Canadian, I generally support players over countries because I can pick and choose. I don't have any deep-rooted connection. So, when uh, France's team was great, being led by, that great squad of Arsenal players. I was a huge France fan. When Spain with Torres from Liverpool was there, I was supporting Spain. Germany back in the days with Lothar Matthias and Klose, I supported them as well. Obviously, in the last World Cup, I supported Argentina all the way. Go Messi, get that World Cup. But always, I've had a weak spot for England. I always wanted them to finally win something to sort of get that uh, monkey off their back, so to speak. And while I do think Switzerland is dangerous and a team that fundamentally could pull the upset, I do think that the gods are with England in this tournament as far as moving through. You could see that in the last performance, how lucky they got, and that's what you really have to attribute it to, a lot of luck, and it came through when they needed to. So I do think they will find a way to beat Switzerland. Switzerland may even have an injury to one of their best players. I just heard recently. His name escapes me, but you know who I mean, the ex-Arsenal player, who obviously has been a key component to this team. But if he's unable to play, that will be very detrimental to obviously their lineup and their ability to score goals as well. So I do favor England to beat Switzerland. Obviously, England are favorites, and most people, I think, would favor England to win, even though a lot of people hate England and hope that they lose, justifiably so. So let's move forward. So then, of course, as we've just talked about, Netherlands versus Turkey. On the outside, the Netherlands squad is deep. They've got tons of talent back in the defensive position. They have tons of depth, right? The problem is up front, forward. Luckily, a Liverpool player has been playing great for them, right? And his performances have really been one of the things that has sort of lifted them forward. And I would love Netherlands to win in this because I'm a Liverpool fan. And if one of my Liverpool players can do well, obviously that's going to lead towards him having a very good season as well for Liverpool. So I do hope that Netherlands wins. And I am favoring and supporting Netherlands in this matchup. But in saying that, things never go as expected. There's always bumps on the road. Just ask Italy. And I do think that in this situation, this probably should have been Italy versus the Netherlands, but it ends up being Turkey. Can Turkey pull off upsets 2 times in a row? That's the question. In this case, I do think Turkey is going to pull it out. I think Netherlands' lack of scoring is going to hurt them in this situation, and Turkey is going to squeeze out a 1-0 win. I guess this could even potentially go to kickouts or shootout. And if that's the case, I would probably favor the Netherlands if it did go to that position, just because more talent. And I think obviously at that point, the talent would rise to the top. But I am favoring Turkey to win. But as I said, I'd be more than happy to see the Netherlands win. I'd love to see the Netherlands versus England in the semifinals. I have one English friend in Taiwan and one Dutch friend, and going and watching the game between those two would be fucking hilarious. So I do hope it works out that way, because for my personal entertainment, it would be the perfect scenario. But, sometimes you have to go against the grain. So I'm picking Turkey to win here. Leave your comments below. Does anyone think Turkey can pull it off, or is everyone sort of leaning towards the Netherlands? Then, of course, France versus Portugal. As I said, I like the Portuguese youth. I've been talking about the young players from Portugal for a long time, and just, right, all these players they're developing. Portuguese love football, and obviously they have a long history of great footballers. But one of the problems is just putting the perfect team out. And I think one of the problems is they feel obligated to play Ronaldo. And I don't hold that against them. I understand, but at the same time, they would be better off to probably do what England did to Beckham, where they were playing him off the bench. If you bring him in late because you need a penalty taker, or, a late goal push, then you pull him on. His inspiration, his determination would be a great addition coming off the bench. As far as him being a starter for the team, I think what you do is then you end up losing one of your strengths, which is youth, right? Speed, the ability to press, the ability to create, right? All of these abilities that they could have because of the real deep selection of players they have. And Portugal has tons of great players. Defensively, they have a very strong defensive back line, and so there's no reason why they couldn't win this Euros. I mean, really, no reason at all, except I think they put too much faith in an older player, 40 years old, and trying to rely on a 40-year-old to lead you to the Euros. I don't think that's ever going to work out well for you. I'm a boxing fan, and when you have the 25-year-old playing the 40-year-old, generally you have to pick the youth to beat the old aged veteran. We just had that last weekend when Bam Rodriguez upset the apple cart by beating Juan Francisco Estrada in a demolition, right? What a performance by Bam Rodriguez. And it just shows you at a certain point, youth wins, right? They're more energetic. They're just at the best part of their game. They're primed and peaking. Whereas Ronaldo is still quality. He's not at that level anymore. Whereas France is one of the deepest nations in football around the world. They could easily front two teams in the Euros and potentially meet each other in the finals. That's how good they are. The problem with them is kind of similar. A lot of times they rely too much on Mbappe, and I think that kind of limits them. You play to him too much. He doesn't play as much defense as the rest of the team, so you end up having a weak spot on that side. And also because of his prima donna attitude, I think a lot of that can bring a lot of negativity to the dressing room. I think even France in this situation probably would be better off bringing him off the bench, because then he'd be angry, fiery, and really aggressive coming off the bench and try to create something. Whereas I think they could easily start other players and be a far better fundamental squad and be performing far better than they have so far, because a lot of what they seem to be doing is playing a very strong defensive system and waiting for Mbappe to have that one great play to score a goal. And it's the same to boxing, right? Deontay Wilder was a huge puncher and could lose round after round after round after round, but kept waiting for the opportunity to capitalize on his big punch. Whereas, 9 times out of 10, that would work for you. But the 10th time, you're not going to land that punch. So you're going to end up losing. And it's similar to France in this situation. I do favor France to beat Portugal, but on paper, you could really see Portugal pulling this off. They have just as much talent, not as much depth, but just as much talent as France. And I think the big problem for both of these teams is the fact that they're fundamentally relying on one player, which kind of takes away from the overall benefit of the system overall. But you do have to favor France to beat Portugal. And so that is the way I expect this to play out. Potentially a 2-1 match. And then, of course, the game that I'm most looking forward to, Spain. This is the kid I'm talking about. I don't know why I can't remember his name. And of course, Havertz, the current striker for the Germany team. Both of these teams are very similar, right? Both of them historically have had great strikers, dynamic strikers, really good goal poachers. You think about Klose and in front of the net, that guy was a monster. You think of the great strikers that Spain has had, like Fernando Torres, as I mentioned earlier, dynamic, fast, a beautiful player to watch. When he played for Liverpool, man, that was great, a great squad. And obviously, both of these teams have historically had great midfielders, very dynamic, able to really create from the midfield. And what they've both sort of went towards was much more of a wing attack, because now they don't really have a striker that's fundamental. So a lot of times their strikers will fall back, creating space for their wingers, and then will follow them into the box for potential tap-ins or rebounds. And fundamentally, for both of these teams, it's been very effective. Both teams have performed well. Obviously, with Wirtz and Musiala, for Germany. I mean, we knew those two players were fantastic. They're two of the best players in the German Bundesliga. And obviously, they're both really playing very well, very well for Germany. Even Havertz, who's come under huge scrutiny playing in England, whether it was for Chelsea or Arsenal the last couple seasons, has really sort of disappointed, hasn't really been a player who's found his perfect spot on a squad, right? They've used him in the midfield, they've used him on the wing, they used him up front. Obviously, Germany has decided to use him up front. He is tall, and he does give them a bit of an aerial attacker, even though he's not much of an aerial attacker, in the way he plays. He's not a very robust player. He's not a guy who's going to put his head in there. He's not a guy that's really going to go for it. He doesn't have that sort of killer striker mentality, which is one reason why people don't really see him as fundamentally a striker. When we look at Spain, they're in the same situation. They have Ferran Torres, who's a good player, very similar to Havertz, right? A guy that people have tried in different positions, but hasn't really found his perfect position either, even though he does look to be a little more fundamentally a striker than Havertz. That's why I think this game is going to be very good. Both teams are strong defensively, very good through the midfield, and both have great wing attacking systems of play. A little weak up front, but the reality is this is the system they've implemented, and so far it's worked out very well. Both teams have been very dynamic, no more than obviously Spain, who've really been the team that's got the most attention in these Euros. And because of that, they are probably even favored to beat Germany in these quarterfinals. But we have to be fair. We have to be honest. Germany does have a leg up. This is going to be in Germany. These players are going to be fundamentally a lot more relaxed, a lot more comfortable. They're going to have big cheering, support system behind them. And for young teams, this could be the thing that gets them over the top. So I do think that, Germany is going to win, as I mentioned earlier, pulling off a 4-3 win in what, will definitely be the classic of this tournament. Just let me close this and see if I can. There we go. So I told you my quarterfinal finalists. Now let's jump on to the finals. So Germany versus France, Turkey versus England. In the English side versus Turkey, as I said, I prefer the Netherlands because for me, it'd be a much more entertaining watch with my friends who are hyper competitive playing against each other. But I do think Turkey is going to upset the apple cart, which is going to make my one friend very angry. And he has been known to break things. But I favor, obviously, England to beat Turkey to go into the finals. I do think this has been kind of fundamentally the perfect situation for England. It's worked out perfect, even though their performances haven't worked out perfect. And because of that, sometimes that's what it takes to win. Sometimes luck and just the way the draw works out is everything. And for England, this could not work out any better. I do see them being in the finals for the Euros, and whether they can win, that's a whole nother question. Then we get to Germany versus France. Obviously, historically, this is a huge matchup. It is in Germany, so Germany does have some advantages. France has fundamentally been one of the best teams in the world, but hasn't really been playing like French teams from the past, which have just been clicking on all cylinders. Something's always seemed missing. Even last year, or in the World Cup, when they ended up getting to the finals against Argentina, they didn't look at their best. They had moments of greatness, right? Mbappe had moments of greatness, but the squad overall, they shouldn't have got by England. Right? They were very lucky. Harry Kane missed a penalty, and that's the difference between them going home and obviously going to the final. So I do think that because of their lack of consistency, that's going to give Germany the advantage they need. And I do see Germany versus England in the finals of the Euros. And that is historic. Obviously, we've had this situation happen on other occasions, and we know how it's worked out. Generally, 100% for Germany. In this case, I'll leave it at there, and then we'll get back to this when we get closer to the finals and see if my prediction was correct or if I'm off kilter. And if I'm off kilter, then I can talk about my mistakes and you know, we can move forward and talk about who is in the finals at that time and who I think is going to win. But thanks for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. I appreciate it. And obviously, the more subs I get, the more motivated I am to put content out. I don't want to just put out fake transfer content, which some channels do consistently. If I'm going to talk about something, it's going to be something that actually is newsworthy, not just speculation. And if it is speculation, then it's going to be speculation. And I'm going to tell you outright that it is just speculation and fantasy and, my dreams as a Liverpool fan. But leave your comments below. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Peace out, and everybody enjoy the Euros. And I hope your team does well.